All right, we are back. We're recording. I hope. I'm gonna laugh if we get this video done and I somehow screwed up the audio. But okay. Who remembers what the difference between an interpreted language and a compiled language is?
Interpreted is much more Englishy than compiled.
Not necessarily. Ruby is.
Generally speaking.
I'd probably even argue that. Ruby is very readable.
Interpreted has an interpreter.
Okay. And a compiled.
System.
So an interpreter does what versus what a compiler is?
It interprets your systems.
Okay, so the difference is you have a lot of source files. That's our code. Okay. An interpreter takes those directly and immediately runs the application using those. Okay. A compiled language takes those source files, okay, compiles it into an application, and then you run the application. Okay. It builds an exe or something like that, and then you run the exe. Okay. What's an example of an interpreted language?
Ruby.
Good. What's another one?
Lua. CSS. Linux.
I mean C++.
That's compiled.
That's compiled.
I heard Python. Python's a good one.
Python's it's not a variation of Ruby or a framework of Ruby.
No, Python's a language all on its own. What's an example of a compiled language?
The whole C family.
Close. Ruby's in the C family, though.
Ah, okay. Well, let's see, C#, C++, C.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all compiled languages. There's a plethora of them.
What's the quickest way to remember the difference? I'm sorry, that's what best way to remember the difference. Interprets. Many files.
I'll show you. I'll show you. Okay. Because what I did was today during lunch, I wrote some quick examples. All right. I wrote the same application in 5 different languages. Okay.
Cool.
So I wrote one in Ruby, one in JavaScript, one in Java, one in Go, and one in C++. All right. Very small application. I just call it shapes. All it does is there's one driver class file for each of them. It instantiates a rectangle class, and those rectangles have some dimensions. Each of them have a width and a height, and it outputs the area of those guys. Very, very simple application, like week 3 stuff that we were doing, Okay. So if I open up the Ruby example, we'll start there. Obviously, it's an interpreted one. This is all I've got for my code, okay? So I make R1 and R2. They're rectangles. Width and height are my 2 parameters going into my constructor. So the 2 is the width, the 4 is the height. And then I print the area of R1 and R2 to the console. Pretty simple, okay? My rectangle, pretty straightforward as well.
Yeah.
So each of them have a width and a height. I made accessors for them by hand. I didn't use the ATTR accessor or anything like that, So I've got a width and height method. I've got a set width and set height method, and an area method which returns me the calculated area. The reason I want to do this exercise is because I want to show you that the fundamentals that you're kind of learning here will carry over to other languages. The object-oriented concepts, the way you design classes, the way you design object interactions, they're the same in pretty much any object-oriented language that you go to.
So they're roughly the same, but
The difference is the syntax.
yeah, they have different words mean different things.
Right, and so several of these are straight object-oriented languages. A couple of them are not. So you'll get to see the differences. So first, the real object-oriented ones, we've got Ruby. and then we've got Java here. Okay, Java is a very popular language. Okay, this is, for all intents and purposes, the same code, except I print out a longer string when I print out the area. Okay, Java is statically typed.
You have to specify a lot more.
You have to specify a lot more. So I can't just say R1 equals rectangle.new or anything like that. I have to specify, all right, I can't ambiguously say R1, hey, variable, you're now a rectangle. All right, when you make a variable, like when I make R1, the left side over here is telling it that R1 can only ever be a rectangle. So if I had a variable x in Ruby, I could set it equal to a string containing hello world, and then right on the line after that I could say x equals 5. I could change it to a number. Can't do that here. A variable has one type and one type only for its entire lifetime. Okay? So this will always be a rectangle.
Specificity.
Now, I meant you don't have to worry about all that too much because we're not using Java. I just wanted you to understand that's what that was. You'll notice here there's a lot more code in the main file than there is in Ruby. It's because this is a compiled language, 1, and 2, this is an actual driver class. So you've heard us talk about the main file as a main class before. Technically that phrasing's not quite right because in Ruby there is no main class, there's just a main file, there's a driver file, there's something that runs the application. Here we actually have a driver class, we have a main class, and every Java application has one of these. Okay? The rectangle is that. So what's a couple of key differences that we see here? Public's everywhere,
What's
okay.
this void thing?
Void means no type.
Ew.
Okay?
Sounds fun.
I don't see you having to set anything or get any,
Oh,
I see the return is the get, I'm assuming,
yeah.
in your sense.
What do you mean I'm not having to get anything?
Well, I don't see you setting this, the private integer width, I'm assuming is what that.
Okay. I'm glad you pointed that. That's what I wanted you to notice. All right. So in our rectangle here, we can say at width equals width. Okay? That at width, that instance variable, just magically pops into existence when we do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that in other languages. Other languages, it has to exist. And so we have to give it a name ahead of time.
You have to specify the integer.
And so when I say this dot right here is equivalent to this same at width, okay? It's pointing at this guy.
That's what this is for, it's kinda like, well, I don't want to confuse, but like the self?
Yeah.
Okay.
So private.
So it's private in Ruby too, but we have to be explicit here because values can't magically pop into existence here. But notice the structure of the application, the object itself. A rectangle is a rectangle is a rectangle. It's got a width, it's got a height. We have methods for getting the width, for getting the height, setting the width, setting the height, calculating the area. All in all, it's not too different from our Ruby file, is it?
Not necessarily.
The class is pretty dang close to that. Now, there's some wording differences, right? Can I?
Up there.
The primary reason for that is because language idioms are different between Ruby and Java. And you've heard me call them getters and setters. You were calling them accessors, you know? Getters and setters, I get that terminology from Java.
Oh.
Okay? It's because instead of saying just width, the standard in Java is you say get width or you say get height, and that's your method name. In Ruby, you just say width or height, typically.
You have to
So-
specify if it's going to be an integer.
You do. You have to specify your return type. If you don't say return something, nothing's returned. Okay? The other oddity, 2 constructors. You know, we can't have that in Ruby, but in Java you can specify as many constructors as you want. And the reason why is because you can't have optional parameters in Java. So I have one constructor for if they don't provide a width and height, in which case I set them to 0. If they do provide the width and height, I set them there. See, a little different,
What is
but the foundation's the same.
What does your main look like again? Just one more time.
Yeah, that's
Java,
fine.
please?
Right there.
Okay.
Not that different from our other one. The only difference is we actually make a class here, right? Okay. Let's look at, this one's gonna be fun. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time explaining this one, okay? But I wanted you to see it. This is the header file from a C++ rectangle, okay? In C++, you traditionally have 2 files to represent every one class. You have a header file and you have an implementation CPP file.
Why does it look like there's a frowny face on line 17?
That's a closing curly with a semicolon.
It's crying.
It's the closing
It's a
for
winky
that guy.
frowny face.
So we have a constructor defined here. Okay. We're not going to talk about that guy with the tilde.
Okay.
We have a get width, a get height, a set width, a set height, and a get area. It's very similar to our Java, right?
Good old Java.
The implementation is that. A little weird to look at, okay?
Tad bit.
But ignoring the odd syntax, okay, the root of it is still there. Notice C++ we've gone back to having one constructor because C++ supports default or optional parameters, okay? So I don't have to worry about having a separate constructor if they don't provide a width and a height, all right? I'm still saying get width, return width, get height, return height, set width, set height. I'm still computing the area the same way. I still have all the same basic functions. And if you look at the main file here, it's this one's even more similar to our Ruby file in the fact that it doesn't have a class.
Smaller than the header file.
It is. This guy does not have a class, does it?
Nope.
Our Java one did. Our Ruby one doesn't, and this one doesn't.
It's included this time.
Now, it does create a couple of different objects in a couple of different ways. And I did that intentionally. You know how we talk about pointers? Okay? In C++, you have to control those directly. The language doesn't do it for you. Ruby does it for you. Java does it for you. In C++, you literally have to make the determination ahead of time whether you want something to be put on the runtime stack or on the heap.
Oh, shoot.
Okay? That's determined by whether or not you instantiate something like this or like this. Another complication that comes with C++ is you have to clean up your own memory. So Ruby has automated garbage collection. So after we get done using objects and stuff like that, they don't just sit there in memory continuing to take up memory. They get cleaned up. It gets erased, right? Java does the same thing. C++ doesn't. So you have to be in charge of cleaning up any memory that you allocate.
Is that what the end-L is?
No, I don't do that here because I didn't want to confuse anybody.
Oh, good.
End L means end line.
Oh.
Okay. This is me printing this value out to the console.
Isn't this predominantly used in Apple?
No, Apple uses Objective-C. Objective-C is actually closer to C than C++ in my opinion, and is a whole lot harder to read in my opinion.
What would you mainly use this C languages for?
The C languages are used they're probably the predominant used languages in the world.
Yeah.
They're used for everything. C is very low level, so it's used a lot more in systems and network programming, stuff that runs in the background that has to be really fast. C++ is really, really good for desktop development. C# is really good for desktop development. Objective-C, like you said, is predominantly these days used by Apple for their desktop iOS applications, desktop OS X applications, and their mobile apps, iOS. So the C family is very, very healthy. People love the C family. We're about to look at a couple that aren't directly from the C family though. Okay? So the first one I want to talk about is JavaScript. JavaScript has no relation to Java.
Doesn't want to be subject.
I don't know.
It's like, you know what? Freaking,
It's not even. Some still debate and argue whether JavaScript is even an object-oriented language at all. Okay, because it is missing a couple of the components that most people used to attribute to object-oriented languages.
So are we gonna open this file? We're gonna have no idea what we're gonna see.
Well, you might be surprised. So JavaScript's a little more functional than it is object-oriented. Okay, there's just as many languages just as many object-oriented languages that there are out there. There's a lot of them. There's just as many functional languages out there. Okay, C is actually one of them. C is not an object-oriented language, though it is the root of the C family. Object-oriented programming didn't become available in C until C++. JavaScript, though, this looks very, very similar to our Ruby. It's a scripted language. It's an interpreted language, just like Ruby is. Okay, it does not require static types or static type declarations. Okay, but the syntax is really weird if you're trying to make an object. That's me trying to declare a class called rectangle.
What's the prototype?
We shouldn't go down that rabbit hole. We'll be there the rest of the class. If you really want to know, sometimes maybe when we get into some of the JavaScript stuff in the later portions of the course, we'll talk about it a little bit.
Would you have done it this, like, would you have tried to instantiate a class if you were, like, if this wasn't an example, if you were doing this, would you have still done, yeah, I'm building a class, that's sort of rectangle?
It depends on what I'm doing. It depends on what I'm doing. That's one of the beautiful things about JavaScript is it's very flexible, especially since Node came out. There's a community backing an open source project called Node.js, N-O-D-E, Node.js, and it is a JavaScript runtime environment that allows you to run JavaScript locally on your machine, kind of like how your browser interprets and runs it, but it is blazing fast, and you can write full stack applications with it. In fact, I've written a couple of desktop applications in JavaScript using Node. It's an interesting technology, and it has a really big supportive community behind it. I encourage you to go look at it some. In fact, I used Node to run this after, to make sure it worked. The last one, and this one's going to be probably the most different one, is Go. Okay? It is, in my opinion, I think it is an object-oriented language. That one's contested just like JavaScript is. Okay? But I don't think it's traditional object-oriented programming. It's more functional than that. Okay? So looking at our main method, we see something very similar to our C++ file. We have an int main method. Okay, but we'll notice we traded in our parentheses for curly braces.
No.
And we've got some extra symbols in here. They're kind of odd.
Oh, that's what you were talking about, the
That's
parentheses,
empty.
parentheses, parentheses.
Oh no, this is not Lisp.
Oh.
What are you importing?
You talking about right here?
Yes.
Okay, FMT is a library. It's a formatter that allows you to print things to the console.
So format.
And this is a string conversion package.
Basically, you have to tell it to import whatever you want to use in them.
Well, you have to do that in most languages, including Ruby. Yeah.
Uh,
There's a few functions that exist in most languages that are global, and beyond that, you've got to include stuff. But this is all the code we have for. It's pretty different, and the reason why is because I could have forced and shoehorned a kind of class-oriented design here. Classes don't exist in Go. You have structs, which can hold data, and then you have behavior, which you can choose whether or not to bootstrap onto structs.
So, and I'm trying to imagine in a functional language and a object-oriented language, the difference being what, in layman's terms?
I wouldn't worry about that too much until you have a
Okay.
firmer grasp on object-oriented programming.
Alright.
It's kind of like trying to tell the difference between two types of food before you've really tried one. You know, well, which one tastes better? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's well, once you get more comfortable with object-oriented programming, start looking at functional programming. It is a very viable way of doing things. Some of my coworkers would slap me for saying that because they're die-hard object-oriented programmers, but
Do I use it probably throughout the day in a Microsoft setting?
do I?
Would I use a functional program in a Microsoft setting that you could think of?
Microsoft setting.
I mean, I use Microsoft Windows.
Oh, you're talking about, is there a functional language
Yes.
that you can use on Microsoft?
No, I'm sorry. Compared to something that's on the desktop that I'm using right now, or have been possibly used before, so that I could. No.
There's no way for me to give you a visual representation of that, really.
There we go.
Yeah.
Converse. Yeah. That's what
All right. So you asked me a minute ago. Let me see if the tool's on here. You asked me a minute ago if I could kind of show you what the difference between an interpreted and a compiled language is. Let me see if the tooling's on here. You'll notice I'm not using John's laptop. I'm using one of the machines y'all are using, so I don't know if the tool is on here or not, but we'll see. So obviously if I go in here to the Ruby example, I can run it just by passing the main file to the Ruby interpreter, right? That's my interpreter. That's a shortcut for me to pass it into the interpreter. I just passed this bunch of source codes. One's requiring another right after another. That's what the require does. Okay. And by passing main in there, I just said, hello, here you go, run this code for me. All right?
Now it took a little bit. Why?
Yeah, mine does it too.
I think it's honestly because it's kind of a slow machine.
It's like not really doing much.
Yeah. So right here, this is my C++ example, okay? This is a compiled language. I can't pass it to any interpreter. So I have to build it with a tool into an executable. All right. So I don't know if this tool is going to be here. It is. Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to use a tool called G++. All right. It's a derivative of GCC. I know all these make so much sense, but there you go. Anyway, so I'm going to let's bring up the help here. Okay. And as you can see, there's a lot you can do. with a build tool like this. G++ is probably at the foundation of most C compiled languages, either that or GCC is, for a build tool. What we're wanting to do is, let me see if I can find the option here. Oh boy.
Numerical order. I mean, alphabetical order. At least.
Yes, it is. Boy, there we go. All right, right here. So -O is the command line tag that I want to use, and I will give it a file name. This file name is going to be the executable that it's going to compile my application into. All right. So if I come down here and let's see what was its command line arguments. Let's go through this step by step. All right. So it runs with CLang as its base. So G++ with options. So our -O and our output name, and then our inputs. Our inputs are all of our source files.
All of them.
All of them. We can't just pass like main.
Whoa.
So if you have an application with 300 files, which isn't uncommon, you have to pass all of them.
Sounds fun.
Have you ever heard of a make file? You've probably seen one before. It just literally says like make file right here,
Maker's mark.
like that. Okay. If you've ever seen one of those in something you've pulled down online that you thought was, oh, I'm downloading this application, wait, I just got a bunch of source code and there's this make file in here. Okay. A make file is a file that is packaged up instructions for a build tool. You keep your make file up to date, it'll pass all those 300 files to the build tool for you. That way you don't have to do it by hand.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and then there's makefile generators that generate the makefiles for you. There's a plethora of tools that go into this process, but let's call this, we'll just call this shapes, and we'll pass all of our files. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Oh, maybe. Alright, well I don't remember how to use this confounded thing apparently.
So I don't see why anybody would do this, go through all this trouble.
They don't. Like I said, they use a makefile generator and stuff like that.
You still have to put those files into the make file though, right?
No. The
Oh.
makefile generator does that for you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Either way, I
Kind of
think,
the way the Rails did all that stuff? I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Either way, what would happen here is we would have a file that was generated that was too low level of code for us to understand. It'd be 1s, 0s, funny symbols, and that kind of thing. So you'd get that file. On Windows it would be an exe. On here it wouldn't. Alright? But you would double click it or run it in a console, and that would start your application. Okay? That's what most desktop applications are. Most of them don't run through interpreters. Most of the time you get a distributed executable, right? That came from a compiled language. Okay? So there's an extra step with a compiled language. It's not more work, and most of the time traditionally compiled languages are faster when they run. And it's because there's less steps for them to translate to before they hit the machine.
They're giving exact details, but here it is.
Kinda. So, anyway, cool, we still got an hour. All right, let's jump back into Rails. So,
Oh yeah.
I expected that to be a little odd, but I don't want you to care about the languages necessarily, but you see the foundation of where what you're learning can be brought into another language. You'll just have to learn another syntax. You'll have to learn another Ruby. You won't have to learn another object-oriented programming. And that's the hard part. Once you get one language down, after I had a couple of languages under my belt, C++, the really weird one that you saw, I learned it in probably the basics of it in about a day. And C++ takes a long time to master, though. It's deep, very, very deep.
But it's got a huge, crap ton of documentation to help you along the way too, though. Not much has changed since a couple of years ago.
Oh, it's still actively maintained and changed. It is. It is. More steady release cycles than probably most modern languages.
Wow.
So by that I mean it doesn't change quite as often. The release cycles are paced, and they try very hard not to make changes that alter syntax or anything like that, or behavior for that matter. They just try to optimize.
You don't have to answer this, but so like when they make a change, what are they changing?
What do you mean?
Are they adding more functionality to the language?
A lot of the time, yeah.
Are they changing like
Languages have bugs. Ruby has bugs in them.
That's what that patch was, latest update on Ruby, something.
Well,
You
so
got Ruby docs right now, it'll tell you
I
something.
got a lot of bugs on my bank teller when I was trying to run it. It just kept giving me errors.
No,
I think that was all bugs.
yeah, that I think that was your bugs.
Vulnerability report, that's what I was saying, yeah.
Well, that's a little bit different, but yeah, if you look at let's see, can I get to the patch history or yeah, here we go. All right, so all these small little updates, okay, 2.17 to 2.18 and all that kind of stuff, usually a lot of that is bug fixes or optimizations where they, we kind of regressed here, this got slower. Languages have bugs. Frameworks have bugs. Rails has bugs in it. I mean, shoot. If we go to Rails is an open source project. So if we go to GitHub, which is another place that's kind of like Bitbucket, it stores repositories. Look at how many open issues they have.
Oh, wow. Those are from user generated?
Those aren't even all the ones they probably have in there. These are the ones that have been reported.
Oh, destroying that, I like that.
And some of these can be range from fairly serious problems to very trivial, yeah. And you'll see though that they're doing pretty good because they've got 8,113 closed issues. So they do solve a lot of problems. But languages, frameworks, they have bugs just like anything else. But you always want to try to make sure that your system gets out with as few of them as possible. And with an application the size of the bank teller, you're not allowed to have bugs. It's just way, way too small.
Look at that, I like that one real quick. Rails backtrace cleaner, add silencer doesn't work, but filters do.
Yeah.
Is there like a Rails office or a Ruby office, or is it all just
No.
like anonymous?
It's not anonymous. They have a contributing team.
It's a decentralized network.
What it essentially is see, here's all the different people who have contributed to the project. What you do is you come up with an idea, or you look and see an issue that's on the tracker, and you go and I can fix that issue. And so what you do is you pull down the source code, and you make the change, you update the test framework, and you commit the change and push it back up using Git. And what you did when you did that is you created a pull request. Someone will go back behind you and review that pull request, and if part of the core team says this is good to go in, they'll merge it in.
You get credit,
And you get credit.
not paid.
Not paid, but credit.
I'm about to say, some of these people, they just love doing this. They love correcting things, they love helping people.
This guy right here, His username is Tenderlove.
Tenderlove.
His name is Aaron Patterson. That's not his real hair. That's Photoshop.
Quality Photoshop job.
He contributes to more open source work than just about anybody ever. I don't know that he can. I don't know how he has a job and still be able to contribute to as much as he does, but contributes in this last year. He's made 1,152 contributions to different projects this year.
That could be as small as a comment, though, right?
Oh no,
Those are commits.
those are pull requests, which can be multiple comments, or multiple commits. Yeah, he's serious. Yeah, it's actually very informative. He's a sharp.
It was really?
Yeah, it is.
I want to make sure I didn't get in trouble.
Yeah, it's pretty funny if you go to any Rails conferences, if he's the keynote or if he's one of the speakers or something like that, they reserve seats for his parents in case they want to come when they do it in his hometown. And instead of putting Aaron Patterson's mom, Aaron Patterson's dad, they said Tenderlove's mom, Tenderlove's dad. That was in there and make them go find their spot to sit. So anyway, back on topic. Everything's got bugs, so the language does, the framework does.
Bugs.
All right. Let's go ahead and get our localhost 3000 up. All right, now I don't have the same computer we had last week, so I don't have the same project that we had started last week.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to start a new one.
How can we follow along with you?
I would kind of like you to, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Rails new, what do we want to call this?
I don't have Rails right now, I guess.
Yeah, you do. You should. We put it on all the laptops.
So how do I access?
You say Rails in the terminal.
Wait,
Rails is not currently installed.
Well, yours isn't. Yours is your own laptop.
You piece of poo.
Say, what you what you need to say is you need to say gem install Rails just like this.
Do I need to do sudo gem install? Because that's what it told me to do.
It told you to do sudo gem? I thought we put Airbnb on here. We did.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, that was just a loaded message. If you say gem install Rails, it'll do it locally. You don't need sudo.
Okay, so it's just telling me admin again. I typed in Rails and it showed me all the help. I just want to make sure.
Good. Yeah. You
Currently
should.
installing Rails.
You should see Rails new. This whole thing right here.
Did you see it, Rails? Okay.
No, just say Rails.
I did that, and it still has me under admin.
Feeling lazy today.
Just meet in the middle.
That's right. Your screen's just not big enough. See that? That's the bottom of this string here. Scroll up. Okay, there's the rest of it.
Rails new usage, Rails new.
Yeah, that's what's at the top right there. So you're good. All right. So, for those of you who don't have Rails, the command's down here, gem install Rails. So now that we've taken care of that, what do we want to call this project? Test app, something? I don't know. Come up with an application
Blue
name.
Jigsaw.
Blue Jigsaw, I like it.
Wow.
All right. So everybody do Rails new Blue Jigsaw.
I haven't heard of any.
Like I said before, this bundle install step can take a second. I think this is the first time this has been run on this machine, so it's probably grabbing a few gems that it didn't have previously.
Mine says this could take a while.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm on the Rails.
There it went. So a few of these had to be installed, so that's what took a minute.
All right. I
So,
apologize.
tell me
how
when-
did you get to that one? Rails.
Rails new
New.
and the application name. I call this one Blue Jigsaw because we've not used that before. No parentheses, no quotations.
I'm still downloading.
Okay.
Ah, okay, creates all
That's
runs,
nice.
gotcha, thank you.
Good.
Oh, good. That's what all the creates, readme, all that jazz, okay.
Using coffee rails.
Oh, CoffeeScript is awesome. I'll show you CoffeeScript. Not today, but I'll show it to you, I promise. Remind me if I don't, because, oh, it's amazing. It's one of the coolest languages.
Why? What do you mean by cool?
It is one of the cleanest, most profound ways to write JavaScript I've ever seen.
Artistically.
It is a, in a way, it's a compiler of its own, but or a compiled language of its own. You write CoffeeScript and run it through this CoffeeScript kind of compiler, and it compiles out JavaScript.
Why is it called CoffeeScript?
It's a pun on JavaScript.
I get you now.
Well played, people.
Well played, community. That's right.
A creative coding name? That's rather sad. That's rather silly.
All right, so
Random ass symbols on top of there.
so now that we're here, we have a folder, okay, and that folder is Blue Jixapug. If you did this, so inside of Blue Jixapug,
Oh man, I spelled mine with an E. Oh
well,
well. It's blue.
as many times as we've used this for an example, you should have gotten it right.
But you'll understand when Dave has blue spelled with an E. He can't spell integer, but he can spell blue.
I'm not touching that one.
Yeah.
So it's
This is taking a good long while to install this.
Yeah, there's just gonna
it might, well, yeah, it definitely is if you haven't installed it yet. So
Holy crap.
because it's big. That's why I tried to install it on all of them in advance. But all right.
warned us.
Bring me this. Next time you bring it up.
So inside of our Blue Jixapug folder, okay, we looked at this a little bit before. Where do we put our models, views, and controllers at?
Wait, say that again?
This is our basic Rails application structure, right? We looked at it last time. Where are our models, views, and our controllers?
The app folder.
The app folder? Okay.
It was config.
Okay, how do you get those folders on the side again?
If you're in Sublime, you go up to the project tab at the top, and there's an add folder to project selection right here.
Yeah.
You click that, and then you just select the folder that you want to add. So like I wanted to add this one,
Did y'all use Sublime?
and just hit open.
Yeah.
I did that and it's not showing.
If you purchase Sublime,
That's
does it
right.
cost? Have you
Oh, I
ever
don't know, I've never.
You just use the free version?
Yeah.
You can't just keep hitting cancel.
Oh wait, hold on.
It doesn't look like
Two
everyone's
windows
got
open. It's only when you try to save stuff.
It might be.
I just wonder, I mean, if we became programmers, I'm sure we'd have to buy it, cause
I think that's the intention. You just sneak it in, say it's a licensed product. And I'm pretty sure Sublime isn't the one thing out there.
no, I know it's not the only thing. Pretty damn user friendly.
Well, maybe I'll close it out.
Okay. All right. So we've got our models, and we've got our views, and we've got our controllers, right?
I'll just sit here and try.
How do we make a index page, a home page? We did it last time, right?
We gotta do it under controller.
What?
Yeah, I was just shooting in the dark.
So if I run this right now, it'll run right before making any changes to it. I can just say Rails S to start it up, correct? It's running at this address, localhost 3000. Gotcha. There's remember our old default page that says basically, hey, you don't have a page.
I knew it was config somewhere.
What?
I knew something was config.
What are you talking
What?
I'm right, aren't I?
I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
The
Come up the
config
routes.
folder, I thought we used it last time.
We did for something.
How did you determine what host? Are we all going to local host 3000?
It decides that for you when you say Rails S.
Rails.
It prints it. Rails S. You just hit enter.
Spaces.
Yeah, Rails space S. It's just an alias for server, Rails server.
Where did it go?
Did you remember to change directories into the project?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done?
Yep, just got done.
I'm
Rails new BlueJits bug.
I've been sitting here for some reason. Appears to be hanging on.
Make sure.
Not sure why.
Mine was hung on installing RA documentation for 4.26.
All right.
Yeah, that's
Four,
fine stuff.
3000. I don't know what a PID is, but I don't care right now.
You don't know what a what is?
PID.
Oh, process ID. Don't worry about it. It's got nothing to do with what we're doing. That's a Mac thing.
You can go to the direction while this is installed.
Okay.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
I
Better be a good one.
Rails space new slash BlueJits bug. Rails is not currently installed on this system.
What?
What the? This is my weekend. I gotcha.
Way to go, Charlie Brown. Local host 3000.
There you go.
Did I install it wrong?
Nope, you did it
I was
right.
in the wrong folder?
Nope, you didn't do anything wrong. That was not anything you did. It was just something that you didn't know you had to do. That's all. So
I like that.
don't worry about it.
All right, I changed my mind. It's under views.
What's under views?
I thought it was.
Man, you were so close and then so far.
That was wise.
Thanks, Yoda.
What was the question again? I forgot.
I said, how do we make a homepage? And we did it last time.
Is it not in config? I really wanted to be in config.
Y'all don't remember our magical generator? We generated it last time, right? Yeah.
I've slept since.
So if I'm here in the console, okay, hit Control C to stop your server, okay? Just tapping Control C, okay? You don't remember this list of generators that we had? We looked at it last time. And we talked about how we could generate controllers, we could generate models, but in this case, what we wanted to do is we wanted to generate a home page, and that even if we just wanted to render a page, we needed a controller backing it, remember? So what we did was we did Rails generate controller home, and remember this guy, the first thing that you type after controller there is what it's going to name the controller. Okay? So we're going to be the home controller. And be there in a second. And then after that, let's say last time I think we just made an index page with the generator. Let's make a couple of different ones. Okay? So we'll make an index and we'll make an about. Everything after that first one, which is the controller, it assumes is different pages, different actions on the controller. Okay, so we're making an index and an about. Make sense?
Rails G controller home index about.
Do I need to have already started the web page?
No. You need to be in the project folder though.
I do not think I am.
Alright, so I haven't installed those good Rails. Alright, Rails.
You're in Rails?
Yep, Rails new what?
Rails new, and give it some application name, whatever you want. And let it go through that process.
I can't just call it Rails. This is
No.
okay, now do that.
Okay, is it done?
Yes, it's done.
Okay, go inside the directory now.
Inside the directories.
Inside of the one that you just created, whatever the application name was you created.
CD. Oh, wait.
No idea where that is.
Go back to your.
Yeah, that's my problem.
It's not. It's still installed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's not done. All right.
I don't know where it's going.
All right. So we're doing a home, index, and an about. Okay? Home controller, index, and about page. Hit enter. And it generates a few things. Okay? Did he really just do that?
She's trying to turn on the flash.
That was amazing.
Just kidding, man. I just wanted to see.
All right, so looking at our code over here, all right, we now have a home controller, don't we?
Yes.
All right. What do we see here that we didn't talk about last time? We obviously have an action for each of the pages, the index and the about page, right? Those are our responses, okay? Those are our actions. What else do we see here that we didn't talk about last time? Inheritance. Thank you.
We knew it was there.
We said it last time. We talked about it.
Good. Okay. What's it inheriting from?
Application controller.
All right. That guy's right here. It was generated for us with the application when we did Rails new. What do we see there?
Also inheriting.
It's also inheriting from something. It's inheriting from action controller base. Okay, action controller is a package. Okay, it's a module. Base is a class inside of that module. That is one of the gems that builds up Rails. Rails is a gem, but it's a gem made up of other gems. It's basically a big package with a bunch of gems and some pre-configuration. Okay. Don't worry about the protect from forgery thing. Do leave it in there though, and don't forget it if you ever make a real website, because it'll kind of keep you from having a certain type of hack done against you.
A certain
So,
type of hack.
yeah, it's called a CSRF attack. But
Man, I think I'm good.
anyway,
Yeah, I'm in this thing.
so, oh, you're in the folder? Okay, do this command right here.
Rails.
Rails G controller.
That's why I took the picture. It was gonna show.
Oh, gotcha.
But
I got it covered, man.
But I put it on my
Alright,
screen.
sweet. Now we're good.
Hit enter,
I got you.
and you should see the prompt. Something similar to what we've got here.
I got Y and A Q D H. Is it like yes, do not overwrite? Oh, yes, overwrite.
Yeah. Yes, override.
Okay, not right.
You good?
Yeah.
All right. Then you're caught up. All right.
Man,
Okay. So, if we go in our views folder, remember it creates a folder there for us that's associated with the controller name. So we have a home folder inside of views, and inside of there is our 2 pages, index and about. All right. Now, this is all the HTML we have here, right? Okay. I can go to one of these. When the server's running. Derp. Okay. I could go to the other one, home about. Now, Mr. Config, why can I get to these?
Because there's a folder made in config.
There's what made in the config?
Not a folder.
No. What else can it be?
Document.
A document. There's a file, right?
And a file,
It's the routes file. That's correct.
which is in the config folder that we went through last time.
That's right. You are right.
Do it.
good job.
So the generator goes on and adds those 2 routes for us, right? Allowing us to get there when we type home/index on the end of our URL.
Oh, it generated that routes folder.
Well,
Or
no.
routes file.
The file comes with the application when you say Rails new. It inserted these 2 lines when we ran Rails G controller, yada yada. We can set one as a root, right? We did it last time. So we're going to uncomment this. And we'll just change this to say home index. We good?
Save.
In the end, I'm getting an error.
You get an error?
Yes. Especially when I'm trying to run the program, this keeps coming up. JSON.
Remember Jason?
Joint Strike Force Operations.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Does stand for something. For sure.
Oh, crushed it.
Oh, so you go around it.
Yeah, crushed it.
Oh, no.
Just throwing a dev kit
Look at that, dude. If you do Rails S,
from that Ruby installer.
it shows you that we're pulling the gets. Ooh.
All right, so we've got our root, right? Home index. Okay.
Tells you what time, dude.
So if I go here and I take this off, I should be able to get there through the URL route, right? And I can.
Now, do you technically have to be having Rails
You have to have it running.
S?
Rails S, yeah, Rails server.
S
Server. If you ever forget, you can just type Rails inside of a project. It'll show you what the options are. It'll tell you the shortcuts too. So if I come over here and stop my server and I just say Rails, see it says like generate server and stuff like that, shortcut alias S, shortcut alias C, that kind of thing. So.
Well, what was cool is I was noticing that it was running those Git applications in the background, like you were talking about, like what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, these routes.
Yeah, the routes.
Yeah. So when you go to the page, these requests are the ones that are coming in. So it's making Git on our index page, which is serving up different assets. Our CSS files, our JavaScript files, our images, stuff like that. All right, so
Assets, turbulence.
I want to spend about 10 more minutes on this, and then we will talk about your homework assignment. All right. Now, Duke, when he was here, mentioned, a lot about the way you should organize your HTML, stuff like that. Now, his discussion was a lot more about the way you design your HTML and put it together. What maybe he was or wasn't as clear on is he said don't put your style inline, put it in your CSS. Well, he didn't really talk much about where that CSS goes. If I don't put it in the HTML file, where do I put it, right? So inside this assets folder here, okay, you'll see we have images, JavaScripts, and style sheets, okay? And inside of our style sheets, you'll see that we have two files, application.css and home.scss, okay? These are, the application style sheet is going to be used throughout your application, okay? The home SCSS is a CSS style sheet, but it's a special kind, okay? It uses a more robust analyzer called Sass, okay? Its short name is SCSS on file extensions. So any SCSS files that you see are Sass files. It gives you the ability to do some pretty cool stuff with CSS, like assign variables that you can reuse later, stuff that you can't do in traditional CSS that can save you a lot of extra writing. So it's pretty cool. So your style for our application would go probably in your application CSS file after those comments. Those comments are actually very important. This is one of the things I kind of don't like about Rails, so I'm going to warn you about it now. We talked about comments, how they're not running code. All right? Rails broke that paradigm. All right? Part of Rails will look through these files, check to see if you have comments, and if you have some at the top, if it can find statements like this that start with an equal sign, it's going to run them like code.
So why comment them out?
That's what I'm asking. I can't, for the life of me, come up with any good reason why they did this. But they did. So that's the way it is. So the code that's running here is a require statement. It's saying, okay, I want to require something. I want to, just like we're saying when we require Ruby files in our scripts. Okay?
Oh, it's requiring a CSS.
It's requiring a CSS file. But it's not just a regular require statement, is it? It's saying require tree. And it's giving it dot. Dot, you may or may not have figured out by now on your Unix machine, means the current directory I'm in. Okay? That's why when you back up a directory, you have to say cd dot dot. You're going back a directory. So dot is your current directory. So it's saying, oops, wrong button. It's saying, there we go. Require everything that's in my current folder and recursively on down. So if I had more folders inside my style sheets folder, it would first look inside here, require and run those CSS files, then look inside of every folder and deep search those and include every CSS file in there.
The tree, like a tree.
Like a tree. Then the very last thing it does is it requires itself. It loads itself.
It loops.
No, it doesn't rerun the comment. It loads the CSS that's running here. Okay? Last. Yes.
That's what I thought that.
It's weird, I know. So,
What if you switched? What if you switched?
it'd blow it up. No, your CSS probably just wouldn't run right. But you'll notice the same kind of paradigm as in your JavaScript folder. Okay? We have a application.js, which is JavaScript that would run on every page in your application. Okay? And it has the same type of require statements. Alright? But they're not requiring trees until the end down here. When it's doing this, it's requiring specific JavaScript plugins. We haven't mentioned jQuery, but almost the whole world has heard of jQuery by now, even if they don't know what it is. Okay? It's a JavaScript framework that is used as a foundation for a lot of other frameworks. We'll end up using it at some point, but not right now. jQuery UJS is one, and TurboLinks is another one. These are .js files that someone else has written that we're including in our application. We're wanting to go ahead and bootstrap them to the screen. That way they run and do their magic. Okay? So even though...
Look, the tree's on the bottom now.
Yeah, it is. Even though I've got small HTML in my home file, has anybody looked to see what the HTML that's being rendered on the page actually is?
Yes.
What was it?
Oh, I mean, just that.
I'm just messing with you. It's
Oh, you meant inspection?
That's the actual HTML that's on there. Those are the only two lines that we see in that dang file. So where's the rest of it coming from?
Magic.
It is magic. Rails magic. Now there's one thing that's not really Rails specific, but you have to have a framework in order to do it. And it's what I want to talk about, and this is probably the last thing about Rails we'll talk about tonight, is partials and rendering templates. Okay? The fact that we have index and about right here, those aren't just pages. We're using them as pages, but they're templates. They're HTML templates. We could actually reuse them just like we reuse code if we wanted to. Okay? Inside of the layouts file here, another name for these is shared layouts. Okay, it's just called layouts. We have an application.html.erb file. There's where the rest of our HTML is. We're still short some stuff though. Okay. Let me broaden this, that way it doesn't look so weird, but okay. So we have our HTML root, our head, the title, some weird junk here, our body tag, and then this weird yield tag. Okay, yield is not HTML. Style sheet link tag is not HTML. This line's not HTML, and this is not HTML. Everything else there is. These files are called .erb for a reason. They're embedded Ruby files. Okay, so yes, they are HTML markup files, but you can embed actual Ruby script code inside of them that will run when the page is being processed. Okay, that's what this is. What this is saying right here is, and let me be clear, the tag is this. Left arrow %. Okay. Anything inside here, if I said 2 + 2, would run. Okay.
Would it run? Would it just print that out, or like?
No, it would not. It would just run it. It wouldn't print it out until I do this. If I say equals, it would print it out. It would put it on the page. Okay.
So put 2 + 2 would put 4.
It would put 4.
Ooh.
The code that's what I was trying to get across. The code that's in here actually runs. You can call methods in here. You could new up classes in here. Anything that you can do in Ruby, you can do in between those two tags. Okay? Now, the equal sign is the kicker there. If you don't put the equal sign, it's just going to run the code, and you're not going to get any confirmation or anything like that. Sometimes you want that behavior, but sometimes you want it to print it out to the screen or to put it on the page. Typically, you would have that kind of thing inside of some kind of tag like a div or a parenthesis set, or maybe inside of a panel of some kind, maybe a paragraph tag. But either way, that's the way you do that. So what is this line up here doing, knowing what we just talked about?
Running all of those.
It's running, well, yeah, it's running that, but the line I've got highlighted, what's it doing? Or, okay, we'll start with this one. What's this doing? What's that line doing?
Printing out the meta tag, CSRF meta tags.
Okay. That's correct. What I was going for is it's actually calling a method. That CSRF meta tags is a method. It's executing that method. And that method is returning us the CSRF meta tags, and they're being put on the screen. Okay? The same's happening here. We're calling a method called JavaScript include tag. We're giving it the one to look for, application, and we're passing some options. This is a hash. You just don't see the curly braces. Okay? But when it's talking about include application, if you look in your JavaScript file, it's talking about this guy. And this guy requires everything that's inside here, doesn't it? So that's why we end up with jQuery, jQuery.js, TurboLinks. It builds out all those script source tags for us and puts them on the page in the proper order that we define them in, so we don't have dependency issues. Okay? The same happens with our CSS. Okay? If we look over on our application file, we do the exact same thing. Style sheet link tag. We give it the name of the file we want it to use, application. So it includes everything in here, but it does it in a slightly different way than the JavaScript stuff. What it does is actually obfuscates it and compiles it a little bit. We'll talk more about how to do that with assets. It trims up your file sizes, and it's pretty standardized by this point. Most people do it. You'll see also that we've got our meta tags here. These are the CSRF tokens, the meta tags we were talking about. So anytime we make a screen, okay, anytime we have a view, whether or not it's a full stack view or some index page that we wrote, we're using an HTML ERB template. And this template engine renders this piece of code inside of this pre-made application template. All right? It does that, and it knows where to do that because of this yield call right here. You'll notice that's exactly where the home index HTML showed up. Okay? It's where the about HTML showed up. You don't have to understand so much about how that works right now. But I want you to get exposed to it, because when you start doing the Rails applications and the more tutorials you do for that, you're going to be dealing with templates. You're going to be dealing with shared templates. You're going to be dealing with partials. And you'll have to have some understanding of at least ERB, or what these functions kind of do and why these dependencies are already on the page for you. All right? So we will probably next week. I wanted to get to a little bit of database stuff tonight. We're not going to have time. That's going to be a lengthy discussion. After that, we can start doing the fun stuff with Rails, because what's fun in an application if you don't have a database? So
Slightly overwhelmed.
it will be.
All of those folders.
It will be. The learning curve with Rails is very quick. The understanding curve is pretty steep. Okay, but it's okay. Don't let it overwhelm you. We're gonna take these kind of one step at a time. All right. That's why I'm only talking about a few folders and kind of letting the rest be the rest. So sometimes you can go through writing entire applications without even opening some of these folders. Okay. So don't let that overwhelm you. Just think of it as all this is work someone else has already done that I don't have to do. Okay?
Now, I don't get how, like when we were building our little web pages, we were linking images that were on our local machines.
Yes.
How does that transfer? Like when y'all brought it up, you still, the images loaded even though they were located.
If they loaded, they used relative pathing. So if I had an image, well, I still have access to the repo. Let me bring up one of the projects. We'll use Nick since he's not here.
And it's terrifying.
Let's see, cracking the code. And then we really got to talk about the homework.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Was it 5? Okay. See how he has his image files here?
Okay.
When you include these guys, imagine just saying the file name .jpg is like saying /. Look inside this directory. Okay, look inside the directory that I'm currently existing in. It doesn't work that way in Rails, because they're not going to be in that path, obviously. But Rails has a different mechanism that you don't actually even have to worry about the path. It will find the image for you. It's pretty cool. We'll talk about it some other time, though. All right.
What's this fun homework?
This fun homework. All right. I talked to a lot of you about whether or not you had a firm grasp on loops yet, and got some mixed answers. Okay. You don't have to make some infinite loop engine for this one. Okay. In fact, this is probably going to be one of the shortest homeworks you've had to do. But I think it's going to challenge you anyway. I hope it does. All I want you to do,
I got some drinking to do.
all I want you to do is we are going to write a class. Did I close Chrome? I guess I did. I want you to write a class, and I do want it to have a driver file, but by this point I kind of think y'all can come up with what needs to go in the driver file to test it and make sure it works, so I'm not going to go strictly over that. But you are going to write a sorter class. Okay? And I wrote down the detailed specs for the class down here. I'll put them in Slack. Okay?
What assignment is this? Assignment like 7? 8?
8.
8, 7, 8.
Okay? Let's see. Alright, so write a class called sortable array. Alright? All it's going to do is it's going to sort an array for you. Okay? By the name, you can kind of think that, oh, well, I'm going to use inheritance for this. I don't want you to. Okay? So I'm specifically telling you not to use inheritance. Okay? Just write a class called sort, because if you use inheritance, it's going to confuse the living hell out of you, and I don't want that to happen for this particular exercise. So sortable array is just a wrapper class. What you're going to do is you're going to give it an array of numbers that's mixed up, jumbled up, randomized, and you're going to do that via a method called setArray. Okay? You should be able to call a method on it called unsorted that will give you back the original unsorted array, or you should be able to call a method on it that will give you back the sorted in ascending order version of that array. You are not allowed to use the sort method on the array class. I want you to sort it yourself. Okay?
Not the dot sort.
Nope. Any pre-built sort method inside the Ruby language I don't want you to use. You're not allowed to use a gem to do it for you either. I want you to write the sort yourself. It's not that hard. Okay?
It's not
Also
understand
loop.
what you mean, right?
I don't want you to have an array like this. Okay? So let's say you had an array called A that had 3, 1, 2 in it. I don't want you to just call a.sort. Okay? I want you to use loops, loop through this thing, and make me an array that's sorted.
I don't like that.
So how, what do the colons mean again?
The colons? Oh, all that means is this is the return type.
Oh,
So unsorted will give back an integer array, sorted will give back an integer array, size will give back an integer.
can you tell me
This won't give back necessarily anything, or don't care about it.
the way to make a certain number of random numbers?
In my example, all I did was I used the same set. Doesn't matter if the algorithm works, it's going to work one time or it's going to work 10 times. All I did was literally I put about 5 numbers inside of an array in my main file, something like that, and I literally just newed up one of these guys. And then I said s dot set array A, and then I called sorted on it, and I did my other stuff. I printed out, okay, print out the sorted version, print out the unsorted version, that kind of thing. I changed the array, made sure that this unsorted and sorted worked, that kind of thing. I would also, you don't have to exercise these, but I would like you to make a size method and an empty method, okay? Just to return the size of the sorted or unsorted array. They should always be the same. okay? And the empty to tell whether or not there are any elements in it at all. So, and that should return true or false Boolean.
Empty for what, the array?
That could be as simple as
I want you to be able to call sortable lit. Did I say sortable list? I did say sortable list. I'm sorry. It shouldn't be sortable array. It should be sortable list. Oh, I haven't had enough coffee. But yeah, just call s dot empty here, and it should return true or false whether or not the array that it has any elements in it. Okay. If you also want, I did this. You don't have to. I'm not making it a requirement. I made it to where I didn't have to call set array. I made it to where if I wanted to, I could pass in the array with the initializer. That way it already had one. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. But if you do that, I want it to be optional, an optional array. So, obviously it goes without saying that you can't just have an unsorted and a sorted array separate. They need to represent the same set, because if you change one, it affects the other. So the easiest way to do that, if I'm making a recommendation, is every time the sorted method is called, just calculate the sorted array on the fly and return it, instead of trying to save it somewhere. Okay? That's a good starting point. You can worry about the efficiency after you get it working. And I'll leave it up to y'all to come up with an algorithm or something like that to sort it. They're very easy, they're very simple. There are some complicated ones out there. If you look them up, I'll know, because I know all of them. In fact, I could show you my source code because nobody would be able to reproduce it. I used one called quicksort.
Control C, Control V.
Quicksort is a more sophisticated sorting algorithm. It's much longer, but it can sort way faster than most other algorithms out there. That's why it's got the name quicksort. Guess that kind of self-explanatory at this point, but so that's all I had in my main file. Okay, I do want some more in here than just what I've got. Basically, I'm just printing the unsorted list and printing the sorted one, but that's my quicksort algorithm. So I don't expect yours to look anything like that. That's a little bit overwhelming, I know.
Loops and loops and loops and
I just did it for kicks. I'm a nerd, so. But, while that looks convoluted, that's one of the fastest sorting algorithms on the planet. So.
memorized.
Oh. Dang it.
I already memorized
Right.
it, don't worry.
Anyway, that's class. So.
Alright.
I will put the assignment on Slack, and I'll try to get the videos up as soon as I can. So.
Well, yes, I feel as though I'm using a lot of Google this time around.
It's not. It's really not hard. It's not. Like seriously, if you really think about it, if you've got a list of numbers, you probably want to start with the second one on the list, and just say, okay, well, if this one's my current one, okay, I'll go,
Is that less than?
am I less than the previous number?
Yeah.
If I am, swap them, and then keep going.
Or you could just simply put it in ascending order, descending order.
Well, that's what he just said.
Yeah, so you can't use the built-in sorting algorithms.
Ah.
Do you want to listen?
I just thought of an easy way out, but now it's gone.
So, like, if we're calling on this one, whatever.
Well, that was already in order.
Yeah, it is.
3:21:45.
No.
2:1:45.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice save.
3:21:45. Is that?
I was just throwing it up.
I got you.
If you want us to copy that one, is that what you want? You want
No,
us to
no, it
copy?
doesn't have to be this. I just put it up there.
Just
as
not in
example.
not in proper order.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to get you to make it to where, don't stress over the unsorted list.
Okay.
Just come up with one. Make up one that's a few. Don't do like 3 numbers or something, because you can actually have an issue with 3 numbers where it prints out even if it doesn't work. So use like 5 numbers, 10 numbers, something like that, but don't worry about having to randomize the list. Just make up a list. I do expect some people to have problems with this one. Just because I'm suspicious of people telling me they've got a hold on loops and arrays right now. We'll see if they're fitting to me.
I don't have a hold on it.
Gonna use a bunch of ifs and